Hello,
Hello, once again.
once again. I feel like we record this every day, but we don't.
I won't take that personally, but I'm with you. And especially when we change the day.
When we change a day, it is one day sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. We're seeing, like last week, I think we saw each other at least twice on
we,
Zoom.
for sure.
So good to see you again.
Yes, always. So we're a little bit winging it
Winging it.
today.
Yeah.
I was telling Casey that our newsletter, that by the time you hear this will have just come out a couple of days ago, is about this statement that Meta started making in spring of 2023, I think, which is that creative is the new targeting. I found this really interesting on a number of levels, just because I think back in the old days, 5 years ago or whatever, like if you wanted to reach certain types of audiences, the way you did that was by like showing that ad. And this seemed kind of like rocket science and like crazy high tech at the time, right? Like if I wanted to reach a certain type of person, I would create whatever content, whatever creative I was going to create, and then use programmatic targeting
Mm.
to get in front of the right person. So I want you to show this to women over 40 who love watching Law and Order and live on the East Coast. And like that's how you narrowed down to that audience, was through programmatic targeting to find that right demographic.
Demographic targeting. Got it. Yeah.
And if I interpret what Meta is saying correctly, and I actually agree with whether this is what they mean or not, this is how I interpret it and what I think is going on. It's not so much anymore about that targeting. I think it's kind of like a field of dreams type thing. Like if you build it, they will come. What's
Mm.
more important than finding that woman over 50 on the East Coast who watches Law and Order is creating a piece of content that is going to resonate with that person.
Mm.
Like, sure, you can be helped out a bit by pushing it in front of her eyeballs.
Where to
But
put it.
what's more important in terms of driving awareness, driving a click, driving conversion, moving someone down that sales funnel that we love to talk about, what's more important is that that content is something that resonates. That create is speaking to that person. You can no longer have just one piece of creative and that just show it to all the right people. You have to have these micro pieces of
Niche.
creative that each hit a different audience.
Okay. So you're saying, whereas the rocket science old way of doing things was to start with an assumption about that demographic, who they were, and push creative to them as the last piece of it. And then based on the success, you would dial in those programmatic variables,
Right.
change the age group, change the location. And what you're saying now, the flip is, let's start with the creative. And that's what we continue to tweak until that audience like bites on a line.
I have a very good example that just occurred to me that I think, well, I'm falling into the Casey thing of giving a story to help explain.
My work here is done.
So I think that it was like in my very last months at Edelman. It must have been like early 2011 or so. We were pitching a deodorant brand that was being targeted to tweens. So this was like, you haven't started wearing deodorant yet. Your mom has noticed that you stink.
Everybody around you would like you
Everyone,
to discover deodorant.
Right, like, hello, you're going through puberty. It is time for you to wear deodorant. And the brand had come to us with this very specific ask that whatever we came up with from like a big idea PR perspective had to appeal to both tweens, male and female, and moms, who would be the ones at the drugstore, at the grocery store, buying the
driving
deodorant.
that purchase.
Right.
Yeah.
So now you're talking about like three very separate audiences: tween boys, tween girls, moms who had the wallet. And we had to come up with something that would appeal to all three. And the reason I remember this so well is because I got in a giant battle with this woman in the room, because I was convinced that they wanted to do a big celebrity play. And I was convinced that there were only two celebrities in all of America that appealed to tween boys, tween girls, and moms. And to this, I stand by this, and I think they still do. The Rock and Jack Black.
Okay, so the Jumanji is
I'm
what we
right.
needed.
I'm right.
Yes.
I'm right. Everyone loves The Rock
Yes.
and Jack Black.
Yes. That's great.
This mean lady didn't agree with me, and she yelled at me. But that
Hence
aside,
Sway Group was born.
So that's like the, I hesitate to say old because this was not so long ago, but that's the old way of doing things. You come up with this big idea that's going to appeal to all of the constituencies.
You're trying to stitch them all together
Right.
with your creative.
And then you show it to the tween boys by putting it on this show, and you show it to the tween girls by putting it on this show or in this magazine or whatever. And then you show it to the moms by putting it on Kelly and whoever she was with at that point. Like that's how you do it. Today, it's totally different. Like if we were to do something like that today, you would have one piece of creative that's targeted to the boys. You would have one piece of creative that's targeted to the girls. And then you would have another chunk that's targeted to the mom. And that's what I think Meta is talking about. And I don't know that what I like about, I mean, I'm not a Mark Zuckerberg fan, but what I like about this statement that creative is the new targeting is it kind of distills down this evolution that we've seen that I don't know that I've heard a lot of people talk about that evolution, and yet that has happened.
What's coming up for me when you mention all of this, when your story was fantastic, and I love the Jack Black and The Rock that is so on point. I remember, and again, this was maybe not that far back, but when Netflix became the streaming service of choice, and so it's got to be a decade ago, I don't know, but when you log into your Netflix account, it will show you different prompts for movies and shows, whatever, than when your kids do, than when your husband or spouse might.
Yeah, like you always know when you accidentally are in the wrong one.
But nobody at first realized that. They were like, wow, Netflix, like they're nailing this. To me, that was formative back then and what you're talking about now. Like we're meeting the consumer where they are versus just pushing our brilliant creative ideas to them and kind of forcing everybody into boxes. So yes, in some ways, I don't necessarily think it's super new. And tell me how you are seeing that unfold in influencer. What's the life? Because I'd love to tie it back to influencer. Like it's always been nimble. It's always been, when people say, oh, let the creators create, this is kind of what we mean is they know how to address their audience best.
Yeah. I mean, I think
it's
about, I think that's why nano and micro influencers are so popular because it allows you to create that many pieces of content. You're not blowing your entire budget on one person because that just makes your job a little bit harder and that makes the stakes that much higher.
It's a little more rigid.
Yeah. I also think I'm seeing a lot of, I should probably stop calling this, but kind of like Mad Lib type content campaigns and I think I've talked about this before, where we have clients asking influencers to record 5 different hooks. And then the client, when they're running that content in paid, is testing the different hooks against their different audiences. And they might create 3 versions of the same main piece of content, but swapping in a different opening to appeal to the different people. And I think influencer marketing is certainly not the only way to accomplish something like that. It's certainly the most budget-friendly way of accomplishing something.
And it
like
links
that.
back to the wisdom that we've had for years now that creators, influencers are mini creative agencies, which is why it's so economical, because you're really employing this creative studio, this strategic messaging, copywriting, visuals, editing at scale, putting it back into your programmatic, your paid, and then doing the review and the analysis from there. Really smart play. Are there people out there who are arguing that, who don't believe that that's happening or worthwhile or?
I don't know. I mean, not that I can imagine. Let's think. Like if it's a big creative agency who wants to get millions of dollars to create one piece of content, like they probably know that they're not going to get the budget to do 2 or 3. So it behooves them to make the case that this one piece of content, preferably featuring Jack Black, is going to appeal to everyone.
Right.
Right? They might make that argument.
Okay.
Not to me.
Right.
I'm guessing.
It'll fall on deaf ears.
Yeah.
But what you're pointing out is what we're going through right now, also in the evolution of any creative industry, of the folks who have sort of been in power or made the calls and are traditionalists just by nature, not because they're stodgy or outdated, but because they're the incumbents, are always going to be threatened by a new paradigm, a new way of doing things, if it, if they think it takes their piece of the pie.
Yeah. I think one thing that I am seeing creative, like the big creative TV forward agencies doing, which is smart, and I love it. We've seen it from Taco Bell, and now it's in the new Old Navy ad. They're pulling in famous like celebrities and they're pulling in multiple celebrities and influencers, and oftentimes a mix of the two into a single ad to try to appeal to as many people as possible within that ad.
Right.
So like Taco Bell pulled in a number, like music stars. They had Gabby Wendy from The Bachelorette, and I know her from Traitors. She's hysterical. I know her from Traitors. They have like a bunch, like anyone watching that Taco Bell ad is going to find someone that they know.
Mm-hmm.
And, who's going to resonate with them. And then the new Old Navy activewear ad, I think, kicks off with Lindsay Lohan. And then they show Dylan Efron, who, again, Traitors fan. I was like, Dylan Efron. And then they show someone else who I can't remember. But I saw that for the first time with my husband. So 2 Gen Xers, and then both of our kids were in the room, 2 Gen Z. All of us, like, noticed the ad. All of us were like, I like those outfits. Old Navy? Like, we ended up having a whole conversation about this ad because it hit all of us.
And then the smart play is to slice and dice all of that creative in different ways and plug it into different channels that are selective.
Right. Like, show me the Dylan Efron, show my daughter Lindsay Lohan.
Right.
Right.
Like, it can be a callback, and then I worry a little bit about those examples only because those are celebrities. So how do we replicate that in the influencer world?
Is Dylan Efron a celebrity?
You knew him.
When your top billing is Zac Efron's brother, I don't know.
Right. But he resonated.
Yeah, no, they're celeb level.
Right. There's
sure.
What I just mean is it's like that flavoring on top of.
Well, that's how it's TV.
Macro.
It's TV. You're not going to pull in, like, you're not going to spend the money on a micro influencer.
True.
You're not going to pull them into a TV ad, most likely.
So when it bubbles down to the influencer, macro, nano influencer level, we're looking at that play minus all the stars being together, potentially. We're looking at the breakdown of if you put Dylan Efron and...
Yeah. I mean, it's the same concept. Like, so that's the high test, very expensive way of making creative the new targeting. That's the TV multi-million-dollar version of it. And then the more for smaller brands, for scrappier brands, for whatever, smarter brands, shall we say.
Right.
The other way to do it is through influencer marketing, doing it online. I think the other thing that could be interesting to talk about, when I was on the panel at that Worldwide Partner Conference a few weeks ago, one of the things we were talking about was the appeal of lo-fi content now versus hi-fi. And I think that's something really interesting too, that even if someone is seeing something on their living room TV screen versus on their phone, there's still something about that appeal of lo-fi. There's targeting even within the choice of lo-fi versus
It is a
hi-fi.
choice. Yes. The one example I have of lo-fi content hitting me in a traditional ad space were the Poppy ads that came out recently, but maybe around the Super Bowl. I don't know, where it was
They had
the owner
something at the Super Bowl. Yeah.
The owner of Poppy talking about, no, it was for a movie release.
Okay.
It was for Minecraft, Roblox. I'm out of touch. I didn't see the movie. And it was so lo-fi, it felt like a direct ad. Do you remember, you know what direct ads are?
Yeah.
Like call 1-800 for your reverse mortgage to get your parents out of debt or whatever, or, you know, a place for mom. So the Poppy ads, because it was the owner, it felt like a local ad. To me, it was very lo-fi and very weird. Like it did not, it was very unsettling, but that could be a good thing. That could be, okay, it's mixing up the paradigm. It's shaking up what we know. It's this person is the influencer. She's the owner, founder that, you know, has dedicated and just sold to Pepsi, right? Or Coke. No, I forget. I think Pepsi. Yeah. I didn't like it. I didn't think it was great. But what I did want to say is that this version with micro and nano influencers that takes the test, like reverse engineers it to the lo-fi boots on the ground, I think also helps scale. I think when you start to dial in on that individual level with influencers and content and hooks and what works, that's then where you double down on creator generated content, feeding your paid without necessarily an influencer facing component to it. I think that's why I keep advocating for boutique, nimble agencies like ours to be thriving, because we are that level, we offer that level that fuels scale. It fuels volume without it being spaghetti against the wall. Let's just spend good money after bad just because we want impressions, too many, you know,
And
reach.
what's kind of nice though, like, yes, and what's kind of nice is that you don't necessarily have to choose one or the other. Like, if
Right.
I were in that room brainstorming this Old Navy activewear promotion, I think it's awesome to have that TV ad that features Lindsay Lohan and Dylan Efron and whoever the other person is who I can't remember. And
Not for you. That person was not for you.
right. And I think you can, like, it's nice to have surround sound and to have multiple things going on at the same time. So I think you can also pull in a bunch of smaller influencers who aren't celebrity level to complement that.
I think not just compliment it, but it's, to my mind, bringing down the fourth wall, right? Because the bigger celebrities and a snazzy produced TV spot is fun when you see it with the family. But then if you involve micro nano influencers and there are callbacks in there, it makes it more accessible, I think, to the average person who's scrolling or seeing their favorite influencer or talk about something. I think there needs to be connective tissue
And I
to
think that,
bring them, because consumers want to be behind the scenes. They want to be in on the joke, or they want to be
true, yeah.
consulted about it, or so that's a way to create that permeation, I think.
I think you can also, when you take it to that lo-fi level and you pull in an influencer, you can have some of those more upfront conversations about the product that would feel weird in a spot with Lindsay Lohan and Dylan Efron. Like, they're just like looking sexy and doing their exercises in the cute new Old Navy things. But with an influencer, it's kind of acceptable to say, like, and this is super comfortable and I can wear it to drop my kid off at school and then go straight to the yoga studio. And I don't, you know, but like, it's cute enough to do both and it's comfortable enough to wear for hours. Like, you can
My
have
baby
some
threw
of that
up on it. I could wash it and dry it and not
but
have
you
to
can have that like
yeah.
nitty gritty product conversation and an influencer piece of content, and that would feel really weird coming from Lindsay Lohan.
I think that's why I didn't like the Poppy. Is it felt too intimate like that? Like too,
It felt too influencery for your TV screen.
a little bit, not just, it felt like a local ad, like the
Okay.
local pest control company was coming. And to your point, the Lindsay Lohan ad is entertainment. It really is entertainment. And influencer can handle both the entertainment and the intimacy
Yeah, we
and the
can
education.
do both. It's so interesting. Like, we've been kind of trying to take a step back and look at all of the content that has been generated on our campaigns over the last, you know, over the course of 2025 and maybe second half of 2024. And there's very different types of content. And some of it is based on the client wants something that feels more polished and is more of a performance where the brand is featured, but not necessarily like, it's not like an infomercial type thing. And some clients really want all the key messages listed out and they want it to feel more like that direct selling infomercial type.
Yeah.
Some clients are somewhere in the middle. And I don't think that there's one, like you look at the influencer content, I think that wins awards and gets a lot of these kudos, and that falls more in that polished
Entertainment.
TV entertainment world. But if you look at results, if you look at what clients actually are wanting out of the content,
Yes.
I could tell you that over 75% of our clients want something that's a little bit more, and this does this, this, and this is why I like it, and here's where you can get it. And like that has all of those calls to action in it that feels more direct.
Yes.
Salesy.
Right. And I love being the guide for that in our agency to help them understand, because I think oftentimes brands can feel the pressure to create the Lindsay Lohan or the high impact influencer campaign that wins awards. And it's a conflict of that. But we also know these are our actual KPIs. So to be able to say to them, those KPIs are great. And let's show you how you're going to get there. Let's show you when we got there. Let's show you what happened as a result of getting there. And those clients are, in most, if not all cases, really thrilled if they're clear going into it that it's going to be. I've used this example recently of working with a client that, yes, they wanted impression, reach, all those numbers, because there's so many constituencies inside the brand that numbers. But at the end of the day, they wanted relationships. And the relationships came through better than expected and fueled their next activation around those very relationships. And so that's growing nicely. And all of this to say, there are a lot of variables that we can hit and we're trying to hit. And let's not try to hit all of them, because that's unfair to any campaign or brand or budget. And, back to this lo-fi content and those hooks, I was reading a fellow influencer marketing professional on LinkedIn who had data around beauty content, videos in the beauty realm, and how content that takes place in a bathroom underperforms. And there's so much beauty content in a bathroom, right? Like that seems sort of natural. So those are the kind of data points I think that the lo-fi, the direct engagement can give us. And you're already seeing that with the give us 5 hooks, which one is going to work best. It's so immediately actionable, these insights. It's so nimble. I've gone on a tangent here. I don't know how to bring it back to any of the points we were trying to make.
No, I don't know. I mean, I'm glad.
Just out there.
Yeah. Always.
Lots possible.
It was kind of shocking to me. I was kind of complaining to a client yesterday via text message that she and I were just talking about life in general. And I was like, thank you. Well, I had seen something on LinkedIn that I thought she would appreciate. And she was like, thank you for showing me. I hadn't seen it yet. And I said, I have spent hours on LinkedIn today trying to figure out what the hell to write about this week in the newsletter. And she's the one who directed me to that meta creative is the new targeting. So to tie things in a bow, I am very glad she pointed me towards that, even though it is 2 years old now. I think it's only more relevant now than it was 2 years ago.
It's never old. And I think the beauty of it is that was a niche down from, let's do one piece of creative that we flood all, like we'll tweak the programmatic. That became niche down. I think it will continue to, it's refinable. I think we can continue to refine creative. New platforms will show up. AI, new resources and technology will show up, and the pendulum will swing back to more experiential in-person events or more high-touch, tangible. So I think it's not a linear path necessarily, but I love this idea of it getting more nuanced and sophisticated. And you and I have front row seats. Like I love being in it, in the works of guiding it. So
awesome.
Great topic.
This was fun.
Yeah.
We always get there. Great to see you too. Yeah. And we'll be back next week.
See you then.